Hey fellow gamers, fresh off finishing Lies of P, here are my final thoughts on the game, as well as a couple tips and tricks for you. Let's jump right in and talk about playstyle. You may already know the Souls-like games, but it requires a very patient playstyle and very specific timing on your blocking, guarding, or dodging. If you get a little bit impatient and you go on the offensive too much, you're going to find yourself dead and having to redo a fair bit or maybe just a little bit of what you've already done. So on that front, it can be a little bit frustrating, but once you get the hang of it, it's okay. A lot of the time you can actually bypass or run through the enemies that you've already beaten and get to that mini boss or the boss if the level is set up that way. From a character perspective, this is one of the things I struggled with the most, especially having come from God of War recently and loving that game so much. The character just felt so amazing. This character just didn't have that vibe for it. I leveled up, I had a lot of the weapons, and I had a lot of different skills that I tried. So I can't say that it was a lack of skills or weapon setup because I will give them credit. There were a ton of weapons and weapon combinations. You could assemble weapons however you like to suit your playstyle, so there's definitely that variety. The game has a great system for respecking as you get a little further into the mid game. It's a very easy respec that costs very little resources, so it's very easy to respec your character for a specific boss fight or for a specific level, or if you just want to change it up and try maybe a faster type of weapon or a slower type of weapon with heavier damage. The enemy types and the mini bosses, I will say, had a decent amount of variety. They definitely kept it interesting with the bosses. There were some very difficult boss fights. After you got a little bit of the way into the game, they all started to become two-part boss fights. So if you ever thought, oh good, I finally beat him, there was definitely going to be a second phase. But just getting to that second phase sometimes was pretty punishing. You really had to learn the attacks in order to either guard or perfect guard and then dodge a lot of them. With the boss fights, there was a nice little perk, and that was the Spectre. So you could summon a Spectre before you went into the boss fight, and you had a little ally to help you. You could also use other tactics like throwables or shielding, and they could be pretty effective too. So as someone who doesn't have 8 hours a day to play the game, I was able to make it through to the end in I think a little under 60 hours total, and a lot of hours probably spent idling. I'd actually even say that the last two boss fights were some of the easier boss fights that I had. The last one I think maybe only took me about 6 or 7 times. So it just goes to show that the more you play, the more that your timing hones in and the easier it becomes. As well, I will say leveling up your weapon makes a huge difference. The other thing is make sure that your P organs are set up for the type of playstyle that you're doing. If you're guarding a lot and you're maybe not getting all those perfect guards, make sure that you've got points into guard regain. Last but not least, the story. Now, it took a little while to get into the story, but it did get good and full, and there was a lot going on and a lot of different side stories as well. I didn't quite get into all of them, but they were there, and by the end of the game, I was into the story, so that worked out. All in all, the game was okay. I don't think I'm going to go through New Game Plus, but not a terrible game. And if you like that punishing style of game and that precision timing required, then I'd say it was pretty good. Just again, didn't have that feel for the character. So that's my review. Hope you liked it. If you did, hit that like button, hit the subscribe. And as always, this was not Adam Driver, and I'll catch you on the next one.